everybody for joining. Please feel free to put any questions you have in the chat, but you'll also have a chance to unmute and ask any questions or give input directly. So we're happy to have all those different ways to get your feedback. We did do this meeting last night as well, and had about twice as many people on the call. And some things that we've learned based on that conversation is, number one, if you'd like to know more about how does the pump station work, that's kind of a different conversation, and we can definitely have it. But the purpose of this is really to talk about the exterior of the pump station. And that means the building, the structure itself, but it also means fencing and walls and stuff like that. So Eduardo is going to lead the presentation. He's, I think you're assistant director of the water department. Is that right?
Yes. Correct. Yes.
Thank you. And the other thing that we learned from last night is that we don't love the way the different options are labeled. So what we're going to do is label it traditional or contemporary with a dormer. And we'll explain what all of those are as we go. But what really happened is the discussion, which is what happened when I had the briefing before the public meeting, was the discussion really centered around the fencing and those options. And that was the biggest issue for folks. So we did touch on lighting last night, as well as, homelessness, vandalism. So all those things are up for you to ask about or give input on. But if you would just give your attention to Eduardo, he'll lay it out so that we can have a really good conversation. So again, thanks for being here. Eduardo, take it away.
All right, he's going to
share his screen.
I'm going to share my screen. Let's see. And then I'm going to turn off my camera because I'm getting connectivity issues. Let's see. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. All right. Well, good afternoon. My name is Eduardo Valerio, and I'm the Assistant Director over Stormwater Operations with Dallas Water Utilities. And Council Member, we made some modification to the presentation. The labeling, I think, has been addressed, hoping to assist with presenting the options. But before we jump into the presentation, I'd like to introduce our team. We have with us, Santa Standifer. I think she's going to join this meeting. I don't know if she has yet, but she's our interim director. And we have David Fun, who is our floodplain management superintendent. Sandra Kindler, who is the project manager for the Hillcrest Pump House. And I believe we have Jacobs Consultants, who is, I think Alan is with Jacobs, and he's joining this presentation as well. So go to the next slide. All right, so as you may know, DART is building the Silver Line to connect Plano to Fort Worth. And the railway alignment goes through several municipalities, including North Dallas. And as part of this work, they are delivering a drainage pump station to address stormwater in the North Dallas area. So as you can see on the screen, just for orientation purposes, we have Hillcrest going north and south, and then we have McCallum. We also can see on the top of the screen the North Central Dallas Police Station. And as what we can see, this yellow line is representing the silver line alignment. The red box representing the site of the pump station, and the green box representing the pump station itself. So as I mentioned, they're delivering a pump station to address stormwater in the North Dallas area, and our engineering team has been working very close with their consultant engineers to ensure that we deliver the proper drainage improvements for this drainage area. As we can see on this next slide, we can see as we advanced in the design of the drainage pump station, we had several conversations with the council member's office. And this was in response to the local community request to integrate the Hillcrest pump station into the neighborhood by building an enclosure, something that will blend in with the community and that will be more, have better presence in the neighborhood. And we had several conversations, and we're presenting two options that will describe the two options that we came up with to present an enclosure that will blend in with the community. As you can see in this map, we can see the yellow stripe representing the silver line. We see Hillcrest on top and McCallum on the right. As we come in the parking lot, we can see we're delivering 15 parking spaces, and the blue line represents the fencing for the security fencing for the pump station. And we can see a section that is represented in gray color, which it is the concrete block wall, though from what I understand will be an opportunity to bring artwork to the community, or we can paint it as, to match the structure as well. We also can see some of the lighting features, the yellow rectangle that we can see on the left of the screen. That's the lighting. And then we also see it in the center and the right of the screen. We have some yellow rectangles representing the lighting. We also see in the middle, we can see the dark green line representing the footprint for the enclosure of the pump station. If I can zoom in a little bit more, we can see this divided line. The left side of this box, we see the pump station features, which will be the pumps, and then on the right of this box, we see the electrical components and generators and other pump station features. So also I like to mention that there's a decorative iron fence that will be around the pump station, and I'll show you a picture in the next slide. Let me bring the next slide. We can see more features. All the green represents the grass for the pump station for the site, and also the green circles represents the existing and proposed trees, and more more plantings around the pump station. And the V1, V2, V3 represents the views that we'll be using as we move forward with these options. So we're going to be referencing a photo or a picture with from the angle that we'll be looking at the pump station. And also, if you can see in the bottom of the screen, we can see the proposed gravel path that will be connecting from McCallum Boulevard to the future trail on the left of the screen. So as you can see, let me zoom in a little bit more. We can see this shaded gray stripe, which representing the gravel path to go to the back. We can see these rectangles representing a couple of benches, and then trees in between on the sides. Okay, so the way we came up with these two options, we went ahead and toured the neighborhood to get an understanding of what the buildings in the area looked like. And we're going to show you some photos of what the architectural styles that we found in the neighborhood. As you can see, we drove the community 4 different quadrants from Hillcrest and McCallum. We wanted to make sure that we capture the styles that are more predominant in the neighborhood, to make sure, to produce a couple of options that will blend in with the community. So this is the routes that we drove, and these are some of the photos. So The traditional residential style are the most majority of the homes in this neighborhood are traditional with the brick structures and shingle roofs and a backyard with fence. But we also encountered some contemporary residential styles. Not very many, but we still wanted to document it in our routes. And we also had some hybrid, what we call a hybrid, more of a combination of the two. Okay, so going straight to the two options that we have. The option one is what we call a traditional with the backyard fence. We can see that the view on the top right of the screen, you can see that we're looking at from Hillcrest on the top left, looking at southeast. We can see the structure, the enclosure of the pump station will be inside this structure, and then the electrical components will be outside, surrounded by this decorated fence, which is basically a brick column with a hardy board fence around this perimeter right here, and that's what we have as option one. If I can show you another view, it's is looking at from the same angle, but we can see the concrete block wall. Let me zoom a little bit more. We can see the enclosure, we can see the concrete wall, and we can see that it connects to the security fence on the top of the screen. And if we take another view from McCallum, we can see that it's pointing to the left, and we can see the gate, the fence gate. We can also see the gravel path on the left of the screen in between trees and some grass area that connects McCallum to the back to the future trail. And also we can see the parking on the right of the screen. And if I can zoom a little bit more, you'll be able to see the enclosure with the brick columns and the hardy boards of representing the fence on the top of this view. And this is the decorative fence that we have as a security fence for our pump stations in Dallas. This is one more view looking at from the bottom left of the screen. You can see the arrow pointing in that direction. This is a clear photo showing the concrete block wall tying into the iron fence. And as far as the enclosure, you can see the 12-foot overhead door that we need for our operations team to be able to go in and out for any maintenance and repairs of the pump station. Something I like to mention is that this drainage pump station will be off most of the times. It would only be turned on whenever there's a rain event. So most of the time would be off. That's something that was asked, I think, yesterday. And going to option two, this is what we call the hybrid option, the transitional model, which you can see the enclosure where the pump station features will be, and then the electrical components will be enclosed. So the main difference in this option two is that the backyard and the fence is removed and replaced with this structure. That's another view from McCallum. So all other components remain the same, which is the gravel path, the green area, trees, the gated fence. Those are the same features. That's a view from the top left corner, which is the Hillcrest and the silver line alignment. We can see the concrete wall again. And this is another view. And I think that's the last slide.
Great. So what you're basically seeing is the most basic of houses with sort of the fence look, or the more traditional house with what we're going to call like that addition, meaning it looks like it's kind of a garage that would hold the electrical equipment. And then what they've shown, which is on the screen right now, has that dormer. So that little bit that's raised up out of the roof, which I think does make it look a little more like a house. But that's really the two issues of the building. But if I can just go back a second and say, number one, the pump house is being funded by the North Central Texas Council of Governments. So DART wouldn't agree to put in a pump house. The city of Dallas, if they were putting in the pump house, putting in a pump, we would get a pump house. And so, you know, our community complained, frankly, a lot. And the COG said that they would fund it. But the COG doesn't build stuff. So they've asked the city, which in this case is the water department, to build it so that it's similar to other pump houses that Dallas has. But also because once this all becomes activated, it's being gifted to the water department, because the water department will run and maintain the pumps. Number of comments last night included things like, well, why are we absorbing that cost? Well, so we're not absorbing the cost of building it. Again, that's the COG. But in this case, I'll just pose the question back to you, which is, would you really want DART running the pumps? I think no. I think you'd rather and feel more comfortable with the professional staff at DWU doing it. And I know I would. So this is actually a good thing, although yes, as a taxpayer, you are bearing that expense. In the very first layout, Eduardo, you were showing with the parking. If we could flip to that slide real quick. There were a number of discussions at the beginning that were talking about the layout of this. And I'm just going to tell you, I asked for as much parking as possible. And I did it really for two reasons. One, we know that when this was the photo studio and the dentist, that a lot of people would park at the retail and walk over to the police station because there's such limited parking there. And that community room, which hasn't been used robustly since COVID, will be used. And so I do think that we need that parking. But second is, as this trail is built, we know that this should not become a trailhead. It's not going to be a parks department property. But we also know people will want access to that trail. And what we don't want are people parking in our neighborhoods. So for some, they're going to drive their car, they're going to get out of their car, and they're going to use that brown path at the lower part of your screen to walk and get on the trail. And so there will be some access to get to the walking trail there. Others are going to drive with their bike on the back, and they'll unload their bike and again, access the trail that way. So this became an important consideration, and I believe 15, with some of those are handicap, is the maximum they feel they could put in. Another consideration that I spoke a lot about and last night was also discussed is about not making this become a homeless location. So along this trail, this brown section between the trees, it's showing 2 benches. I think originally it was told to me to be picnic tables. We've asked them not to put that in. So we're not really looking to have people linger there. And we may, in fact, want to put some additional hardscape, or sometimes they'll call it hostile nature, meaning like prickly plants. But we're not looking for this to become a homeless encampment. Now, of course, it's across from the police station, so you would think that that would maybe play in, but not necessarily. The other thing that you have to realize is at the top of your screen, that's Hillcrest, and Hillcrest is descending very rapidly, very steeply. And what we want to make sure is people are safe. So there had been a discussion is could people walk on that green part that's on the top part of your screen to get onto the trail? And we're going to discourage that. We're going to make it where they can't, because what we wouldn't want is for someone to fall over, which would be very, very tragic. So if you could go to the screen, the slide that's got the bridge, you'll see how it's going to tie right into, there we go. So I don't know if you can, yeah, there you go. So you see how the rusted out looking bridge, which is standard what DART's using throughout the entire Silver Line, the fencing will tie into that so that you couldn't go around the north side of, well, it's the west side of the building to get there. And I hope you understand the safety reasons for that. Now, a couple of people have objected like, oh gosh, who wants to see a chain link fence? There's going to be chain link fence throughout quite a large portion of the trail. And that's just a reality. In this case, you're going to have the rail line, which will be on the south side of the property. Then you'll have a sound wall. Then you'll have the trail. And then the property will be on the other side. It'll have the chain link fence, or it'll have the security fence. So if you look at this whole line, which is to the north, on the north part of this trail, you'll see there's the bridge, then there's chain link, and then in this case, it's showing the wall that will be where the old Ivy Montessori is. Also, the COG paid for that. It's not a full 15-foot sound wall. I think it's going to be a 9-foot concrete precast wall is how they're calling it. So in between there, where that chain link is, we're going to have an opening where people could walk where those trees are to get to the parking. So I wanted to make sure I told you about that part. There was a discussion last night about lighting. You can see some lighting in these photos. So you can see the white poles that are right next to, yeah, there you go. And then even further on, you can see a street light, which is at McCallum. And we have asked to make sure that there'd be appropriate lighting where the tree area is, again, to discourage, I'll just say, teenagers or homeless. We want everybody to be safe. There are a number of questions about vandalism and how inviting that wall would be for tagging and graffiti. And you know what, it's something we'll have to deal with. We'll see if that becomes a reality. You would have to climb the 6-foot chain link fence. I don't think it's very difficult for many people to do that. However, you know, we might decide we want to put a mural there. We might decide we want to just color block it. We might want to just have it be beige and continue to paint over it. Our code compliance department has been outstanding at responding to tagging. So I'm not particularly fearful about that kind of maintenance, other than making sure we have matching paint so that we don't end up with some weird colors. So with that, this is your meeting and your questions, and we would love to hear what you have to say and what your thoughts are. Do we have any? I'm looking in the chat. I don't see any.
And something I like to mention, council member, is that as we move to design, we're going to be adding more details. So it's not going to be a plain box as is shown now. We're going to be adding more details to it.
Great. Okay, well, so I'm not really seeing any questions in the chat. Does anyone want to raise your hand? We can call on you. You can unmute. Oops. Okay, well, I don't see anybody. I can't believe that's true. There's one in the chat. Okay, let me go back to that. Here we go. Wondering about the downslope at Hillcrest. Is it starting at McCallum Boulevard, or can it start a block or two earlier? So Elizabeth, are you talking about the sidewalk? You could unmute. No, about the street. Oh, yeah, no, it can't start earlier. It had originally been discussed to start earlier, but that would have caused DART to have to reconstruct the McCallum Hillcrest intersection, and that would have been more expensive. So of course they didn't choose to do that. It will be extremely steep. It's a very steep angle. It's actually legally allowed. And we fought that, but lost. So we are getting the worst design possible, in my opinion. Okay, Buzz, you have a question.
I do, and good afternoon. And I want to thank Kara for her efforts in getting this done. It didn't happen organically. It was through her efforts and her struggles to get the COG to agree to put up this building. The ultimate design, I think, becomes a question of aesthetics, but the reason it's even there is because of our council person, Kara Mendelson. We should all give her a great deal of thanks. That's my comment. I do have a question for Eduardo, and it's not about the house or the station, it's about the actual pumps. And if our Eduardo is still online.
Yes, sir. Yes,
sir.
I'm here.
So here's my question, and it's pretty fundamental. Who did the actual design for the pumps? Was that the city, DART, Archer Western Herzog, or some other entity?
It was a DART's consulting firm, and it was in collaboration with the City of Dallas Water Department. We have a group of engineers that are connected to this meeting, and they are responsible for, from a drainage standpoint, we have a group of engineering who are dedicated to work with their consultant and ensure that the necessary improvements are delivered for this drainage area. So it's a team effort.
Well, I have no concerns about the city of Dallas's competency in regard to how pumps should run. My core question is, what redundancy is there? Because I've read reports that pumps unfortunately fail from time to time. And I've got a grave concern about people that are trapped in that 18-foot valley during one of our rain bombs, and what happens when one of those failures occurs. So maybe you can explain to the group what the pumps, how many pumps there are, what they're designed to do, and what would happen if they failed.
Right. For all of our pump stations, and we have different types, right? We have water, wastewater, and drainage pump stations. And as part of our design efforts, we built some redundancy. As we know that from time to time, we do our regular maintenance of our pumps on a regular basis. We have our maintenance cycles, and we, as part of the design features, we built in some contingency on the number of pumps that will be on, and in case of any malfunctioning failures, we have other pumps to come on. And we also have our SCADA system connected to our pump stations, where we can identify when it's on and off, and when there's any issues that we may run our electricians and mechanics to go out there and do maintenance. So every time we have a storm, we have our group of electricians and mechanics and engineers on call and ready to assist for any issues across Dallas with the pump stations. So I don't have the design in front of me to give you a specific number of pumps that are delivered to meet the demand and the capacity of the drainage area. But that's essentially the general concept of our drainage pump stations that we have in Dallas. So this is not the only one we have. We have a few in Dallas, and some of them are very, very large compared to this one. And we come up with the same, uh, concept when it comes to redundancy and safety features for our pump stations across Dallas.
Just for a level of comfort for those that live in the area and might be traveling in this new valley created by DART on Hillcrest. Has there ever been a time where, regardless of the manufacturer, the dependency of the pump, that there's been an example of a pump failure, and what is done in that regard in as far as traffic going down into that valley? Has anyone thought through to that type of contingency plan?
And in addition to what I just mentioned, we also have an external vendor for emergency response as well. If it gets to a point where we need to bring in additional pumps, we have a contract on hand that we can bring vendors and set up pumps if it's necessary when it comes to an emergency. So luckily, I have not been experiencing that in my time in the drainage world, but I know we have that ability to be able to respond in case of an emergency.
Eduardo, I want to thank you. It gives me great comfort that the city of Dallas is in charge of the safety of its citizens who are meant to travel on Hillcrest if and when it ever opens again. And our friends to the north in Plano that like to use it as a major route to get into Dallas. So the fact that DART has nothing to do with controlling those pumps is the only reason that I can go to bed tonight comfortable that the city and the citizens are in good hands. So thank you. Didn't mean to bore you, but it's pretty important stuff because I don't want to see a bunch of people killed.
You're
is.
welcome. And we have a huge
The
system that
city,
it's capable of monitoring rainfall conditions and flooded roadway warning signs. So it's a very, very detailed and complete system that we have across Dallas that I'm sure we can spend an hour talking about it, but appreciate your bringing your questions and concerns, and we're happy to answer.
Thank you, Eduardo.
Eduardo,
I'll
go ahead.
mute myself.
I was just going to say, Eduardo didn't share this, but I think it's important to know that the city hired a water expert consultant to evaluate the flooding concerns. They say they don't have any. I still have flooding concerns. Elizabeth put a note in there about if there's ice or snow, or I'll add in flooding, would that mean that Hillcrest would close? Of course, everybody says no. I've lived in this area for more than 40 years. I've never seen Hillcrest close. I've never seen it flood, never seen it ice where you couldn't drive on it. I have a feeling those days are ahead of us, and it will happen. And, I would love to be wrong. I would so love to be wrong, but I think that we all know that's coming. Lola had a question in the chat about how will we choose whether we want option 1, which is on the screen now, or if you want to show option 2 again, Eduardo, that would be great. And basically, you're going to kind of take turns and either put it in the chat or unmute and say, hey, I really like version 1 or version 2, or I like version 1 except for this, or I like version 2, but I'd really like to have that also. So like, this is your chance. Tell us what you think, and then we'll combine it with what we heard last night, and that's how we're going to proceed. This is your new neighbor. So let's see. Someone's asking about having a side-by-side viewing. So I don't know that we can do that, but why don't we flip back and forth?
That's option 2.
So that's looking at right now. And then if you want to flip back to 1, there's 1. So we've got 2 people in the chat saying that they like version, the 3 people in the chat saying they like version 2. And that was really the consensus last night. I think there were some, oh, Buzz, oh, now he's really going for it. He says he likes whatever I like. I like that. Okay, so, oh, hi. Lewis is on. Hey. So I think there is generally a consensus that the version 2 is a more attractive look. I think they're going to continue to refine it, as Eduardo said. I've been assured by our interim director of water, Sarah Stanifer, that that we have the very best folks working on this, and so I love that. And I'm not sure if Susan's on today. I don't see her. Okay. So anyhow, all that to say, we're going to end up with a product I think that we can all live with, which would be 1,000 times better than the open field they wanted, where we didn't know if it would make noise or smell or what'll happen when the trucks come and all of that. So I just want to say I'm very, very thankful for DWU for their hard work. They've put a lot of time and thought. You could see just from the routes of the houses they looked at. They've evaluated the other pump stations in the area in northern Dallas. And I just think they're really being very thoughtful and sensitive to the community that they know has been very, I'll just say, engaged in this process over the last 15 years. So all that to say, I appreciate your time. If there's anything else that you want to say, feel free to unmute and let's just get it out there so that we can make sure that everybody's thoughts are included and we can have a really good product. No? Okay. Well, y'all were a great group, and boy, we got through that fast tonight. I have not heard anything about any further delays on Hillcrest. I don't know if you've looked at it from the McCallum side. If you look down, you can see that they're making some progress. But my understanding is that there is a $25,000 a day fine if they go over that 1-year mark. So that's the scoop. That's the status. We'll have a little update in the e-news. And if we need more feedback, we'll come back to the community and let folks know. Eduardo, do you have any final remarks?
No, I just want to appreciate your participation. It's very helpful for us to understand the view from the community so that we can move forward to the next step, which will be design, adding more features, and we'll be happy to share more details as we make progress. And we're hoping to get design done and get construction complete, and that's our goal.
So the only other thing I'll mention, since it didn't really get brought up at this meeting, but it did last night, is about this idea of being a trailhead, which is to say, we purchased land off of Davenport. So right where the railroad tracks are at Davenport, we purchased the northwest corner of that house, and the house is going to come down, and that's going to be a trailhead, which just means basically it's a parking lot, bathrooms, some picnic tables. And that's where we're really going to ask people to go and park and go get on the trail there. Another place that the trail significantly impacts District 12 is going to be at Preston Green Park. So this is Duffield. And the park is actually going to now be bisected by the trail, meaning this is the only place really in our district where the trail is going to leave the adjacency of the tracks. And in this case, it's going to veer into the park and then come back around. You can see the bridge has already been built. It looks just like the bridge that you saw in this presentation. And what that community has said repeatedly is, please, we don't want to become the Katy Trail. There's no parking at that park. The parking is along the street. And if you've ever been there, when there are a lot of people there, it's also in front of people's houses. And they're not liking that idea, which is why we bought the land off of Davenport. So all that to say, that park, we've hired a designer who has come up with a wonderful plan given what they've got to work with. And that park needed a refresh anyhow. It'll get a new playground. The basketball court will be moved so that the ball won't interfere with people who are on the trail. You can imagine how that could become a safety hazard. It also is really context sensitive about people who are on the trail. And let's say they're on a bike and they're going really fast and you've got a kid who kind of wanders away from you. You can see how you could get knocked over. So there's lots of thought about how that doesn't happen and how to make that not happen. So I'm really proud of what they came up with. They came up with a couple ideas. We met with the most adjacent neighbors first. They gave input. The designers refined their plan, and then we had the meeting with anybody who wanted to join. And there was a lot of positive comments about it. So so we're going to move forward with that. And would you believe we actually already have funding, which is, always the problem. For the trail that's in District 12, all of that is, I'm going to say, proposed to be funded, meaning it's not all been voted on, but it's all sort of designated from Davenport headed west, meaning to underneath Preston. All of that part is already done. And then from this bridge crossing, from Preston Green Park, all the way headed east out of the district. All of that part is done. So the only segment that hasn't been done is between Davenport and Preston Green Park. That's the only part that we have not identified any funding. And what's happening is the COG is writing a lot of grants, federal and state, looking for that money and then giving those applications to DART to submit. And DART is building out phase 1 of the trail, meaning the most critical places. That's places where there's things like bridges, right? So think about Hillcrest, how it's closed. They can put that trail bridge while it's closed and it's safe. But if that trail bridge wasn't installed, I don't know how it would ever be done, because you'll have an active train going. How are you going to put a pedestrian bridge right next to it? That would be really difficult. Plus, you'd have to close Hillcrest again. So things like that had to be done early. So that's kind of an update on the trail itself and where it's headed. Does anybody have any questions about that? No. Okay, well, good. I hope y'all have a great afternoon. I would love to just, if anybody wants to say anything about this, like, we've never really done one of these during the middle of the day, but it was suggested to me that not everybody wants to do them at night. So generally we do them from 7 to 8. And so I was like, well, let's just throw one up at noon and see if, people want to do it on their lunch hour. Did you like doing it at noon better? You can send me an email if you like it. And if so, we'll try to mix it up and try to have it available. Lola likes it during the day. And Elizabeth says she forgets when it's in the evening. I totally get it. I did that the other day. I was on the phone. Okay, well, thank you so much. Y'all have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.